Welcome everyone to day 7 of the training, and in today's training I'm going to talk a little bit more about tossing the ball into the court. This is a very common theme you hear a lot of coaches and pros say, you got to toss further into the court. But it's important first of all we understand why. Why is it important that we toss the ball into the court? Reason being, your racket throughout the swing, it has the point where it's moving its fastest at the maximum velocity. And that time is when the racket is approximately 2 to 3 feet out in front of you. That's when, if you do a shadow swing and you listen out for the swoosh of the racket, so I'll go and I listen for it, and when I hear it, it's out in front of me. That's why it's very important you toss the ball out in front. There are other reasons for this. If you toss the ball too far behind you, it's going to commonly result in the ball flying long. So it's also another critical factor to consistently be able to get the ball going into the service box. So that's why it is very important that you toss the ball into the court. Question now is though, how far into the court is acceptable? The best players in the world, they'll be tossing the ball anywhere up to 2 to 3 feet inside. The better you get, the more you'll toss the ball into the court. What you also got to keep in mind is the pro players, they're also jumping. So they're not necessarily jumping, but they're coming off the ground. So they're leaving the ground when they hit, so there's more forces acting upon the body. So they toss the ball further into the court. Now, if you're not jumping and you're just doing, sometimes I do this, where you step through, just like this, and you step through with the front foot, obviously you can't toss the ball that far in because you're going to start to collapse with the upper body. So you want to avoid that. So general recommendation, okay, for everyone watching. I want you to toss the ball around 1.5 to 2 feet inside, as you can see by that ball toss placement. Let me go back just in case you can't see it on the camera. I will also show some other views of this. But here around, I would say, a racket head, just a little bit greater than a racket head length, as you can see. So around 1.5 to 2 feet. Okay, that'll be plenty enough into the court. Now, most of you, what you want to avoid is anything like this. If you let the ball fall and it's falling on the baseline or behind the baseline, then you have problems. Okay, now, what are some of the keys in terms of getting the ball going into the court, since that's also a very important factor? First thing, let's talk about weight distribution. Problem players have is, as they're transferring the weight back to the back leg, and players start initiating the toss in action as they're doing that. So they go into the back leg and they initiate the toss. And obviously, what is that going to do? It's going to pull the ball backwards because your weight is transferring back. What you want to do instead is you'll turn away from the target and the weight will transfer to the back leg. But now, as soon as you begin the toss in action, the weight is going to now begin to transfer. So as I just about release the ball, for me personally, my weight is approximately 50-50 weight distribution. Maybe a little bit more on the front leg by then, because I'm transferring forward. Now, obviously, I don't want you to transfer too far forward to where you're leaning too much, but that's the general principle. You'll turn away, weight will transfer. As you begin the toss in action, the weight now will begin to push from the back leg and start to even out the distribution between the both legs. That's the first component. Second component that I want you to feel. Now, this obviously also depends how far you're turning away, but even if you're turning to this point where the arm is approximately a 45-degree angle into the court, as you're releasing the ball, I still want you to think that the arm is going into the court. If you look at me here, I'm going to go to just initiating my tossing arm, but watch my arm. It doesn't just go on a straight line this way. It goes into the court, and that gets that ball going in. So really feel that even though you're turning away, you still stay sideways, but the arm goes in, and that's ball going into the court. Now, obviously, another thing you have to keep in mind is if you're used to tossing the ball behind you, two things are going on. Another thing which could happen is you're too frontal. When you're too frontal, if you release the ball too late, the ball is going to come behind. So by turning the shoulders away more, that's going to help you. But then obviously the other component which I wanted to say is initially you'll have to exaggerate, and we will get into the progressions on this, but if you're used to tossing the ball behind, you really have to make it feel that you're tossing the ball too far into the court initially.